Hello, shipmates. August here. Welcome back to the show. While listening to this episode, go and check out our online sailing community, the Quarterdeck, at quarterdeck.59-north.com. I'll be posting a bunch of cool photos on there of Andy and me performing this anchoring technique so you can see exactly what that looks like. If you've not been on the Quarterdeck recently, you're missing out. I've been doing some really cool live streams on there recently where we have discussed weather routing for Eastbeyond live, watching the boat on the tracker page and the weather coming in and advise the skipper. It's been really fun, and there is more content on the way. There is a 2-week free trial to all new members, so go to quarterdeck.59-north.com right now, and you can check out those anchoring pics, and hopefully you'll sign on with us. Today's topic is something that I believe is pretty unique to Norway and Sweden. I don't think this is practiced anywhere else. It really shapes the way people sail and cruise up here. It confuses foreigners, and it's taken for granted by the locals. And recording this episode got me thinking of how different sailing might be in other parts of the world that I don't know about, where local conditions create their own unique cruising techniques. So if you know of similar practices where you sail or that you know of, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, August, Orca has been sponsoring this season of the podcast. It's a Norwegian company, I think Norwegian and Spanish. I was significantly impressed with the week I had on Spica. It's basically like you and I have been talking about tablet navigation for years, and they finally, I think, figured it out. It's a marinized tablet with an induction charging mount. You can put it at the helm. It's fully waterproof. The charts are great. I love it. I've used it only for a week, so the jury's still a little bit out, but I know you just installed it on Eastbjorn, and you mentioned that John Amtrup, one of your skippers, has used it for years and is a fan. So tell me about your experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've only so far just played around with it and installed it, but the installment was a fantastic experience. So it was, it's just, you have the tablet, which is great, it's a marinized tablet, and then you also have the Orca Core, which is this kind of compass hub thing, and you just plug that into your N2K network, and then that's it. It took me 5 seconds to install, and even
I know I couldn't stop smiling. Like, you can't believe, and it just talks to each other. It just works. It's like finally modern technology that just works. It was amazing.
Yeah, power,
I felt the same thing.
Data, everything just comes directly from there, and it doesn't even have to be like you could just throw it in there behind the electrical panel. It just doesn't need to be oriented in any way, and it just works. So,
yep,
fantastic stuff. And seems really smooth. We've discussed the merits of tablet navigation versus chart plotters for hours and hours on these podcasts, and this does seem to be maybe able to kind of combine the pros and cons of both of those methods, which is really cool. It's again, haven't really tried it in battle yet, but just the fact that it can, the range of screen brightness is so great, so you can actually use it when you're navigating at night and also in bright sunlight. It has physical buttons, so even if it does rain, you can still use it. It has this little zoom and center and scroll buttons on the side. We go sailing on Eastbjorn, we go sailing in snow and sleet, and people wear mittens, and you can't use a touchscreen anyway, and just having those buttons is going to be so great. And also the charging situation. I have tried out so many ways of charging the iPads outside in the cockpit of Eastbjorn, because when you're going coastal, along the Norwegian coast especially, you need to watch the charts all the time. And you need to charge it outside. It needs to charge while it's waterproof, and it's impossible to do with an iPad. And this wireless charging mount situation with Orca seems to be a very, very good solution.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the coastal stuff. I mean, you've long wanted. I mean, we don't really need a chart plotter in the cockpit on Falcon because we're offshore 99% of the time, and the times we are inshore, somebody can stand there with the iPad and it's fine. But on Spica too, I'm short tacking down through the archipelago with all these rocks and skerries and stuff, and you have to have something there. It's like, I don't know how we did it before, in paper chart days. My crew and I were talking about that. It's just crazy, but it's really cool. I mean, you also need it to be like super duper real time fast refresh. And you can see on the logs that I have on Orca how close we get to some of the islands. Now it's also visual. It's like, just don't hit that cliff over there and you're fine. But it's like I was confident that I could navigate where I needed to in real time. And they're not paying us to say this. They gave us the equipment for free, sure. But I'm very close to giving a full endorsement on this after we use it for a little bit longer. But so far, I'm very impressed.
Yeah, really cool. There's many things to check out with the Orca. One thing that I'm quite excited about is this kind of remote. You can monitor your boat remotely because you can connect this hub, and to if you have a SIM card connected, you can monitor your boat and all of your N2K data on your phone, pretty much, which is very cool, if that works the way I think it does. So that'll be nice to get into.
Check out getorca.com to learn more about this. And I'm actually going to interview Christian, who's in Oslo, another Norwegian I'm stealing from the podcast.
Norwegian,
for
damn
you.
it. Well, I mean, there's so many great Norwegian sailors around. I mean, what can you do? That's
So thanks to Orca for sponsoring this episode of the podcast.
Welcome to On the Wind, the podcast about sailing. I'm your host, August Sandberg. Today, Andy Schell and I discuss ankring, the Norwegian and Swedish translation of the English word anchoring. Potato, potato, you might say, but a Swede and an Englishman would define them quite differently. In this episode, we'll teach you how to anchor like a Viking.
August, greetings. Welcome back to the podcast. It's very nice to hear your voice after a long absence.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. It is very good to be back, and good to see you too, buddy. How's it going?
Good, very well. I'm home alone with Axel now. Mia's at sea on the Falcon women's trip, somewhere off the coast of Northern California now, I think. They got about 300 miles to go to San Francisco. Maybe Oregon. Not quite sure where they are. My West Coast geography is not so good.
Yeah, no, same. I've never been there actually. So, but that's cool. That's a neat trip. Yeah, Isbjørn's also out sailing. She's putting around the Orkneys right now. Looks quite nice. Yeah, so
cool.
I think they're having a blast.
Are they going to make it to Fair Isle?
Well, I don't know. Could be still.
One of your favorite anchorages, I think you've said on this podcast once before.
That's right. Yeah, I think still is my all-time favorite place I've ever gone to. I always try to go there, and I know Johan loves it as well. Johan Amtrup is the skipper on board, so if they can do it, they will do it.
I have a photo in the forepeak on Spica in the V-berth cabin of the puffins up on the hill there with that big rock in the background from the bay there. It's really neat. So we wanted to talk about anchoring today, and this is stern anchoring specifically. And this was inspired by, I put just off the cuff, stupid Instagram post. I'd actually sent a video. It wasn't even recorded for Instagram. It was a little video that I sent to my dad that showed him that, hey, I took the bow roller and the anchor and all the chain off of Spica to get the weight off the bow, because my dad had been in Sweden and helped me deliver the boat from where we bought it up to Stockholm, like a 100-mile overnight sail. So he had left, and I took a little video and said, hey, look what I did. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is good content. I'll put this on Instagram. And like, people went bananas over it. Like, I mean, it had like 300,000 views or something, like crazy. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Why are people so upset about this? I got to find this. I just got to fill some audio here. I got to find the post and read you some of these comments because it's quite humorous.
Yeah. It's, I know, stern anchoring can mean many things. I guess, there is this technique of where you're anchoring in a large anchorage and you want to set a stern anchor. You can kind of stabilize your boat's direction. That's something that you can do, I guess, also called stern anchoring. That's not what we're discussing today. This is I think it's also called a Scandinavian mooring or Scandi.
Well,
mooring.
This is why it's so unique, is I think what riled people up so much is people didn't understand what I was doing, because it's so this is like cruising on the coast of Sweden and in the archipelago. There's no other place in the world that has the kind of geography and tides that allow you to even do what we're going to talk about. So anyway, so this first post got up. So this was posted, I think back in June, has gotten 441,000 views, which, and like our Instagram stuff gets like 10,000 maybe. And then a follow up to it where I'm like, okay, this is something to this. I walked around my boat club and videoed like other boats, none of which had bow anchors. That's gotten 715,000 views.
Holy hell.
It's just like, I touched a nerve somehow on here. And I feel like we have to kind of set the record straight, because like some of these comments are just like bananas.
Read me a couple good ones if you have.
Here's one. By law, you have to have an anchor and a chain, dude. Okay. Let's see. Hang on. This is terrible. I have to edit this. You're going to be in serious trouble if you need to anchor during a storm. There's a couple good ones in here. There's one. He must sail in the backyard pool. I'd never do this. Also, would make it hard for reselling it. Also, hope you properly filled the holes. Every boat needs an anchor. It's about safety. It looks worse. You are a hazard. So you don't know how to back into your slip, climbing up and over the... I also installed the little bow... Not installed. It's a little removable bow ladder that everybody uses over here to get on and off the boat when you're bow in like that.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy's like, don't know how to back in your slip. Climbing up over the railing is not a good idea. You can't always stern anchor. And it's like, okay. So anyway...
It's pretty obvious that people just don't understand what's going on. So
not one bit. Yeah.
What we're talking about here is the practice of dropping an anchor off your stern and then mooring the boat ashore. Often quite close up to like rocks and skerries and stuff. And it's really sweet. It's a fantastic way to anchor. And I think it is quite unique to Sweden and Norway, like you said, just because the geography allows it, and also you won't really find many traditional anchorages. It's very deep, it's very rocky, and so that is kind of the option you have if you don't want to go into the marina. This is just what you do.
Yeah, it's quite cool because it's also specific here in Sweden where it works a lot better on boats under 40 feet because you're basically handling everything by hand. Some bigger boats have like a stern anchor setup that has a permanent mounted kind of anchor roller that folds down from the transom, and then the rode goes internal into an electric windlass and stuff. But it's just much easier. Like on my boat, I have the anchor kind of hanging on the stern pulpit and lashed in place when we're sailing. There's about maybe 8 meters of chain in a bucket that's like not lashed, it's like attached to the stern rail. And then there's this webbing reel that's like 1.5 inch, 2 inch thick webbing reel that's 75 meters, which I think is like 250 feet. And when we're coming in, I just pick the anchor up, and it's a 20 kilo anchor. I just chuck it in the chain overboard, and I continue motoring into the rocks. And it's super easy. And it's part of the reason Mia and I bought a smaller boat for our family cruising. And actually 36 feet is a pretty big boat in the archipelago here. But it's just so much easier to do this and anchor onto the rocks like that, and it's just not a big deal. Anything bigger than that, and it starts to get a little bit more difficult. Interestingly enough, another former 59 North crew member bought an OE36 because he was cruising around in the archipelago on a charter boat, and it had more of like a plumb bow, like a straight stem, and it's harder to do it that way because you don't have as much overhang. Like on my boat, we've got like 8 feet of overhang, so you can literally have the bow of the boat overhanging the rocks, and you just climb down the ladder and you're there. And meanwhile, like you got 12 feet under the keel. It's quite cool. And I would say it's not. Some of the people in those comments are like, "Oh, well, you can't just anchor stern into the wind." It's like, no, you're not doing that. You're tying to the shore and using an anchor as a kedge to keep you off the rocks. Is really what's happening.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it's a little freaky. I get it, and I remember when I was doing it, alone for the first time was a little scared as well, because you're getting like really close to those rocks and you need to take it very nice and slow. But it's a really, really safe and very snug technique. And it's also not just for sailing boats. Power boats do it as well all the time. That's how, when we were the summers when I grew up, we had a little fishing boat here, and that's what we did always. Just went stern anchoring like that. That's
Don't
really
you
nice.
have tides though? That are you just talking about stopping for a few hours for lunch, or don't you have like a rise and fall of tides?
It's a little bit, but that's fine.
Okay.
If you have enough chain so that if you throw out your anchor quite some distance to the rocks that you want to tie up to, and make sure you have some heavy chain on there. Once you get ashore, you can tie up your boat like really close to the rocks to get on and off and such. But then if you just want to hang out for the day, you just ease out some line so that the boat isn't parked that close to the rocks, and just let the weight of the chain pull the boat some 10 meters off the rocks maybe, and so there she sits happily, and then you just pull her in again to get on, and then so you need to play it a little bit like that. But yeah, we have meter and a half of tide, and you can do that just fine. Yeah.
This would not work in places like England where you've got like 10 meters of tide. I mean, you'd be high and dry. It would not work. What's also interesting is it doesn't work. People are like, well, why don't you just med more? And you can't do it in these places because even though it's deep near the rocks, it is still a sloping shelf. And, your keel is back halfway back in the boat, usually like kind of right under the mast. So if you have, if it's only 2 feet deep where the bow is, it can be 8 feet deep where the keel is, and you're still good. But if you try to go back in close enough to step off the transom, your rudders are going to be aground or broken off. And that doesn't work either. So you don't see people sort of med mooring like that, even though that's a similar concept.
Yeah, true. And also it's a lot easier to get off the bow on most boats than it is to get off the stern. Depending a little bit on how your hull is formed. But yeah, no, it's definitely a technique that goes best with large overhangs, both for the bow and also for the stern, because you're going to have to deploy that stern anchor somehow. I have a nasty anecdote from when I was doing this on a weekend trip with my Maxi 108. That I lived aboard, and during the weekends we would go cruising, and I had some friends aboard, and my brother Axel, whom you know well, he was with me, and we're
Axel's namesake, my Axel's namesake.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. He was with me. He was going to deploy the anchor, and that boat has quite a dramatic, like a reverse stern. So the opposite of an overhang. So if you were to just drop the anchor off the edge of your cockpit, you would just break a big hole in your boat. So you kind of have to throw that quite far or lean out. And as we were coming in through these rocks, he kind of held on to the rail on the back and kind of leaned back out to clear the stern to deploy the anchor, and he accidentally had held onto the swim ladder, that was folded up, and it wasn't secured properly. So as he's standing there,
I can see where this is great. You just set this up perfectly. I know exactly what's happening now.
So with this, with the big anchor and the chain and everything, the ladder just falls down with him, and with the anchor and chain and all that stuff right on top, right? So that could have been really scary if he had gotten himself tangled up in that. But it's set really well, the anchor, so very manually deployed.
Yeah, really.
And we had a great weekend. So
I didn't know this was a thing either. I mean, Mia and I, Mia never sailed before we met. So when she had never sailed in Sweden, so she didn't know this was a thing either. So we sailed Arcturus over here. We started the trip in 2011, got to Sweden in 2012, and we're coming in and seeing all these boats doing this. It's like, wow, that's really cool. But like, we didn't have the setup for it at all. We were just like most other cruisers. We had the bow anchor, and we had even installed a bow roller on Arcturus because it didn't have one when we bought the boat. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this? So we had a separate, our bow anchor on that boat was a CQR, like a plow. And we had a Danforth just lashed on the like cabin top as a spare anchor kedge, whatever. So I got that out and got a length of chain and like this, giant coil of 3-strand rope, which was just like completely unwieldy, and started learning how to do this. And it was quite cool. And then once we got, when you go from, because that 3-strand rope, yeah, it works, but like now you have this giant 300 feet of, 3-strand rope is a big pile of rope. And they've got these webbing reels now that makes it so much cleaner. You get so much more length. And also the cool part about that is you just drop the anchor and chain over, and the webbing the reel just pays itself out, and like keeps perfect amount of tension on it as you're moseying in, and then like you can get the bow tied up and don't even have to worry about the anchor because the webbing is like there's enough friction in there to hold the stern off, and then you go back and you just pull it tight and tie it to a stern cleat. So learning all this over the years was quite fun as well. And then once you have the proper setup, it just makes anchoring and unanchoring just super, super easy. The downside is on our boat, we don't have a roller on the stern or anything. So I'm like leaning over the push pit, hand over handing this webbing and chain. And it's, it's not that heavy, but it's 20 kilos. It's not so good for your back. And when it comes up muddy or full of clay, it's just like, now you've got this disaster in the cockpit. It's like, what do you do with this? So there are some downsides to it, but we don't have a hose or anything set up. But most of the time in the archipelago, it comes up clean because it's a lot of kind of gravelly stone and kelp and stuff like that. Occasionally, though, you get this like sticky, gluey clay, which is just like impossible to get off. But I actually did this. I tried this on Ice Bear once, and Ice Bear was the boat we had before Falcon, a 59-foot swan that weighed 60,000 pounds. And we were on the west coast of Sweden. Emma was with me as first mate, and it was such a beautiful evening, and I really, really wanted the crew to experience what this was like. But like Ice Bear has, her bow anchor on that boat was 55 kilos, a 55-kilo Vulcan with like 100 feet of chain and then, 20 millimeter 8-plate rope all at the bow. So I wasn't going to deploy the kedge would have been too heavy to even retrieve. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We went out, and what you do when you do this is you scope out your spot first and you nose in and you check the water's usually clear enough to see if there's any boulders or stones or anything. You nose in. If it's all clear, you circle back out, pick your spot where you're going to drop, and then nose in again. But on Ice Bear, we had to drop from the bow and like just let out a shit ton of road, pull the road around to the stern, and then mosey in, and somebody was tending it. And it took like an hour and a half to get it all set up. But it worked, and what we said we'll put some pictures up on the Quarterdeck to kind of illustrate this. I have a beautiful photo. We ended up cooking dinner on the boat, but then we went up on the rocks and had a picnic, like as the sun's going down, and it's just like such a unique experience. And it's also why boats can be so small here. We're at Huvudskär in Sweden this summer, and like next to us turns this like 28-footer with like 8 people on board shows up. Because as soon as you're on the rocks, you just expanded your area. You can, people take grills up there and they cook on the rocks. It's like camping, and it's quite cool, and it's so unique, and it's such a refreshing way of doing things that I was never aware of before I came here.
Yeah, that's quite cool. How different different places do different things in different ways, just depending on what the ocean and the geography is like. If you say, like, I'm not sure what this is in Sweden, but if you translate anchoring in Norwegian, that this is what it means. Like, this is going to the rocks is what it means. If you talk about anchoring in like a sandy anchorage where you're swinging around to it's called å ligga på svaj.
It's exactly. I was going to bring this up. It's the same in Swedish. Ligga på svaj. You're like literally swinging.
Yeah. So it's just a completely natural, the normal way of doing things.
What amazes a couple things also I think are really cool about this. Different charts. Like we use an app called Skippo that covers the Swedish archipelago in great detail, and right in the app it tells you, either in a red highlight or a blue highlight, red for sailboats, blue for motorboats, if the shoreline is steep enough and free from underwater hazards to anchor like that. So when you zoom in at the lower levels on this Skippo app, you can see where the places are. And obviously those become the more crowded places in the summertime when everyone's out because they're easy to find. But once you see, like, once you learn, like, okay, because you can see the contour, the depth contours underwater, and you see the land contours on the hill. Once you learn where those places are, and then you study the charts, you can find them everywhere. It's like, okay, here's a place I could go. Here's a place I could go. Here's a place I could go. And then the other neat thing is, I'm still amazed that, we were out in the outer archipelago earlier this summer, Stura Nassa. There's like 12 boats lined up, side bumper to bumper, literally fenders to fenders. And I've yet to see, I'm sure this happens, and I would like to see it happen, but not be involved in it. I've yet to see a situation where people get their anchors crossed and like there's like yelling and fussing around. Like it's usually pretty undramatic.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't think I've ever seen it go wrong in any way, actually, which is a little weird. But it is, because it is a little scary. With even if you're by yourself, you have basically set your boat up in such a way that it's kind of, if the anchor were to give, you're kind of just spring loaded to just launch yourself into the rocks, right? So yeah, but I guess you just gotta, when those anchors, if they really set in the rocks and the boat's not moving anywhere, that's just because it's tied to the rocks, then you're in a pretty good position. And it's mostly always, I've at least always done this with anchoring into rocky bottom. Is that true in Sweden as well?
Like I said, it's gravelly. Sometimes it's clay, depending on where you are. There's a couple times. There was one time this summer when I was with the 59 North crew on Spica where it actually took us 5 tries to get the anchor to set, because the bay was really shallow. It was only like 8 feet deep, but it was filled with kelp, and the anchor was just plowing kelp and like not hooking into anything at all. I'd reel it in, trying to get some tension, trying to dig it in, and I'd just come up with like a garden full of kelp. So it took us 5 tries and moving around different places till we actually caught in the mud. There was another instance.
Maybe you just pulled out all the kelp. Maybe that was the.
Well, no, I moved to a deeper spot. I didn't plow the ocean, the seabed here, but where were we here? We were at this same place at Stora Nassa. And I should say the caveat to this is like, it needs to be pretty fair weather, or if it's bad weather, you need to be in the right spot with the wind direction. Like, you always want to have the wind blowing you away from the land. Because like you said, if the anchor does give way, at least you're not on a lee shore. Like, even in light wind, you don't want to be on a lee shore. So you can see, like, depending on the weather, there's a lot of little bays and stuff here where you can utilize either shore, but all the boats are on one shore depending what the wind direction is. So you really do have to pay attention to that more so than normal. And there was one case where Mia and I this summer rode out like a 40 knot low pressure system a few weeks ago, and we elected instead to just anchor in the middle. We're like, let's just ligga på svaj, like you said.
Yeah,
let's just not mess with this at all. I'm going to sleep better. And we were in a very protected bay anyway, but the problem was that night, the wind was going to go all the way around the compass. So there was no real protection anchored on the rocks. So we just said, let's just sit in the middle here, and that worked fine. And in that case, we deployed the anchor from the stern, just like we always do, and then I simply walked it around to the bow and tied it to the bow cleat and put up some chafe guard and stuff. So that's how I have my bow anchor since we started this conversation saying I took the bow anchor off, and I did that because I'm not taking this boat long distance cruising where you need all that chain, and literally the bow like came up like 2 inches getting rid of all that weight. So it's like how I use the boat is the reason we got rid of the bow anchor, and it allows us to put that ladder on there as well. But what I was going to say is there was a spot in the outer archipelago where all the boats, there was like 12 boats in a line, all on facing these pretty high rocks, but then not far behind it was this other little island, and it was very deep in the middle of this channel, but like the island was so close that you pretty much needed to like drop your anchor almost at the island, and then come in. And when I did this and came in, we were like squeezed in between 2 other boats, and when I went to set the anchor, it didn't set, and I basically just pulled it all the way back in. So now I'm just rafted to the boat that's next to me. And they had kids on board. They had a paddle board. So they're like, oh, give it to me. So we put the anchor in the chain on their paddle board, and they paddled it all the way to the back as I let out the reel. And then they dumped
Nice.
it back by the island, and then I snugged it up, pulling it in, and that worked great. So everybody over here has paddle boards, incidentally, instead of dinghies, because when you're tied to the rocks, you don't need a dinghy to go anywhere because you just step off the boat. And paddle boards are a lot easier to store on deck on a small boat. So like every boat has paddle boards, and we caved and finally got one as well for Spica. So we've got a paddle board now as well.
Very cool.
Also useful for deploying the anchor.
True. Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah. It's funny how, with how all these different techniques and setups you can use for this. It's, on my little Storfidra, Swedish boat, right?
Skulken, right?
Skulken,
my favorite, one of my favorite all-time boat names. Tell us again what it means.
It's the end piece of a loaf of bread. It's exactly what the hull looked like. Classic double ender, full keel boat.
I love it.
25 feet, so very, very small and neat. And she had an anchoring system on the stern called an ankralet, which is a kind of this kind of mechanical deployment kit for stern anchors, where you if you're solo sailing, you can kind of set that up, and so you could just pull this little lanyard, and off goes the anchor with the spool of webbing, just like you have on Spica, and really, really neat stuff. And I'd say it's almost more common for boats here to have like windlasses in the stern rather than
on the bow.
In the bow. Yeah. My brother-in-law Matthias, who's also sailed with us, he has a boat with a stern anchor that's just right at the almost down at the waterline, really, at the stern. So he just, with the push of a button, he can drop that anchor when he's coming in. And
cool. Yeah, it's interesting. One of my crew is from England, and she on our Spica trip, and she has a little 22-foot kind of like looks like a shrimper type of thing, but it's fiberglass, like a classic British boat that back in the day would have had a gaff rig and a big bowsprit. Hers has a Marconi rig, but it still has a big bowsprit. It's got this bowsprit and a plumb bow, and there's nowhere to. It's not set up for anchoring. It's just like a day sailor. But she likes to go out and take it out and like drop the anchor for a picnic lunch or whatever, and then sail back in. And she has trouble pulling up the anchor on the bow without a bow roller or a windlass. And she's like, we were looking at pictures. She's like, what do you think? How do you think I could do this? And I was like, well, actually, this is a case where you're not going to anchor by the stern the way we do it here. But she has like a pretty straight transom, and she could set up kind of what you're talking about at the stern, where she could have a windlass in the cockpit. She's got plenty of space. She can run one of those folding rollers on the stern, and the anchor can mount vertically on the transom. All the road can come through a fair lead at the top of the transom into a well that's already there with a windlass, and then she can just anchor it like that, swing it around, tie it off from the bow, because she's going to be anchoring, anchoring swinging, Liga plus five, like you said.
Yeah.
And then when she goes to deploy it, just deploy it from the stern. And she's fair weather day sailing, picnic lunching. It's you wouldn't necessarily want to do that if you're trying to bring the anchor up stern to the wind. If it's blowing hard and chopping, that's not going to work so well. But for like lunch anchoring on a day sailor, I think that's a pretty clever solution. So this, depending on the situation, you can apply this to other aspects as well, which is cool. And like, it's always good to have, if you're anchoring, like look at Skip Novak, for example, anchoring in all these crazy places. He's got warps and shit, all kinds of stuff all over the boat in different directions. So you can anchor in the middle, but then tie your stern to a tree or to a rock or whatever, the kind of more traditional way people think of tying up like that. True.
Yeah. What kind of anchor do you have? Did you say that on Spica?
I deliberately didn't say it because it's not. I don't want to endorse it. The boat came with a Delta, a 20 kilo Delta anchor, which is not really what I want. I'd rather. I think for we talk about anchors a lot on here, and the big boats have. You've got a Rockna on Eastbjorn. We've got a Mantis on Falcon, but when you're stowing the anchor on the stern push pit, those don't fit so well. They fit better in like a bow roller. So I think
they're all the plow type, right?
Yeah, the best kind of anchor that fits for this kind of anchoring is actually the Bruce or the claw anchor, because you can mount it vertically, and they actually make like a little bracket thing for it, and it's kind of low profile, and it's suited for the bottoms over here. It works quite well in rocky bottom and a kelpie bottom and stuff. So that's what I will have. That's what we had on the old Spica, and that's what I will get eventually. But the boat came with it, and just got to pay a little more attention. I've never dragged, so. Yeah. But I wouldn't endorse a Delta anchor. I think generally the consensus is that they're kind of the bottom of the totem pole. Probably better than an old school plow anchor, but not as good as the kind of modern anchors. And a Bruce isn't a modern anchor either, but it's better than the better alternative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we have on Eastbeyond for that purpose, and that's what we've always used on all the boats I've had. Because one, they're very easy to stow, and also the ones that work best for like rocky bottoms, which is what you'll mostly find.
Have you done this from in Norway on Eastbjorn at all ever?
Not on Eastbjorn, no.
Well, I've done it.
We did it once at my island.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, when I was there. Yeah, that's
right.
I forgot about that.
I think that might be the only time. Yeah.
I think we also in the process didn't we like pick up the electrical line or the water line or something?
That's right. We accidentally anchored to the water supply to the island.
We weren't going to drag anyway.
No, it was a pretty solid, great set right there. So that's cool.
Yeah, we did it once on Eastbjorn in Sweden before you were involved back in like 2017, sailing with our friends Tom and Darlene, actually, who you know, on the West Coast. Did it a few times, and like I said, it's so much easier on a smaller boat, but it was doable on Eastbjorn.
Yeah, I have done it on boats on Eastbjorn's size a couple of times, but yeah, no, it is definitely easier with smaller boats. That's for sure, But the rock anchors works really well, and the claw is great for grabbing onto rocks, and you don't like the ability to reset the anchor doesn't really matter when you're doing this, because it's constant. You have one chance.
And it's constantly under tension, You're pulling in one direction. But like I said, checking the weather is super important, because you don't want to wind up on a lee shore or with a heavy crosswind. We had a pretty strong cross breeze earlier this summer, and in that case, we actually tied another line from a midships kind of sideways out to a tree, and that kind of took some of that sideways pressure instead of putting all that sideways pressure on the anchor. And you learn all kinds of tricks and tips, and I'm like surprised how, because it is a fairly tricky maneuver. I'm surprised how competent people are at it. Like I would love to take your kind of average Chesapeake Bay sailor who's never done this before and plop them here and said, all right, go ahead and try that and just see what ensues. And the other thing, like culturally, I think this only works in a place like Sweden where people talk quietly, because like you're like I am the loud American, and like you're lined up literally like. You're basically rafted up 9 boats in a row, everybody with the stern anchor out when it gets busy in the summer. And like, it's fine. You don't hear a lot of commotion. People are respectful. There's no loud music playing. I mean, there of course are people that are partying and stuff, staying up later than others, but like, it just amazed me. I'm like, this would just be a completely different scene if this was full of your typical American boaters, particularly if you, no offense, because my dad's one of them now, but particularly if you include the motor boaters.
Yeah, so maybe you're right.
I think it's a uniquely cultural thing as well that just might work for that reason, because Swedes are so quiet.
Yeah, maybe. It's also a fact that the big beauty of this is the ability to just go anywhere you want and go ashore and explore whatever anywhere, and that might also be like a uniquely Scandinavian feature.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I kind of took that for granted, but they have this concept here. I think you have the same in Norway, called allemannsrett, which means you are allowed to access any land so long as you're not disturbing it or literally like parking in someone's backyard. So this applies like to hiking and camping and everything. So that's a good point. It's that, but also just like the archipelago is literally thousands of islands. Like you can't, there is no, and there's nobody there. It's not like these islands are filled with houses. I mean, some of the ones in the inner archipelago are, and you're not going to do that in their backyard, but it's still surprising how many choices you have. There's just a million places to go.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Same in the fjords around here. Like you spend your whole life just exploring just a very tiny area, and but you have just so many places to go. It's really, really cool.
So if we bring this kind of full circle back to my Instagram post from before, I think the conclusion here is that I think the people that made the kind of snide comments, it's just such a unique thing. I don't think anybody realized what I was even talking about. And I hope that this kind of clarifies that a little bit and, proves the point that you don't, it just depends on where you go, what the situation is. So, I hope, and go look at our Instagram, 59 North Sailing on Instagram and look this up, because there's just simple little videos I made, and they just, my first ever viral post, August, of all things.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And we're going to go ahead and put up some pictures of us doing this on boats on the Quarterdeck. So if you want to come and explore this idea a little bit more, you can come to Quarterdeck at the quarterdeck.59-north.com.
You got it.
We're going to be, it's good. There's been a little bit of a lull now with over the summer, but now we're going to be there's going to be more action there, so it might be a good time to step aboard.
Yeah, cool. What was I going to say? Oh, this is also a good time to say that if this kind of cruising sounds interesting to you, I'm doing another cruising trip on Spica next year with 59 North. So that's going to be in first week in August 2026. It's up on the website now. So come join me, and we can practice this kind of anchoring next summer.
Very cool. Very cool.
Cool.
Good plug. Nice.
All right, Skipper. Until next week.
Hold fast.
On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by Nikki Henderson, Jesse Zevelkink, and August Sandberg. The show is mixed and produced by me and August in Sweden and Norway, respectively. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, sailor, and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends, the Storm Weather Shanty Choir from Bergen, Norway. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to join us on the Quarterdeck as well to nerd out about seamanship. That's quarterdeck.59-north.com. Until next time, hold fast.
And when me money was all gone on liquor and the horse, I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said, last time you was paid up with me, you took up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Once more. take your advance and I give you the chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any horse. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.